I sat down with her, I laid everything out. I was like, these are my symptoms, this is what's going on, this is why I think that I have endometriosis. Hi everyone, my name is Greer. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to share the story of how I was diagnosed with endometriosis, as well as a little bit on what I'm currently doing for my health today. My co-star Jibby, my little kitty cat, will I'm sure be in the background or maybe even the foreground, jumping around throughout this video. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Definitely don't forget to like and subscribe. I took a little bit of time away from making videos, but now I'm coming back and want to be posting really frequently. So if there's something you want to see on my channel, definitely let me know. So I made some notes for myself because I didn't want to forget anything while I was making this video. So I'm just gonna kind of tell this story in chronological order, and the kind of first bit is I had painful periods really from day one, from the day that I got my period, and it kind of got progressively worse. I think I got my period when I was like 13, 12, and then it kind of got progressively worse to the point where when I was 15 it was, you know, I'd be like doubled over in pain, my stomach would really sick. And I went to the doctor. The first thing that they did was put me on hormonal birth control, so I started taking the pill from a young age. Excuse me. And I kept on that until I was about 17. And then when I was 17, during that time I had taken like multiple different types of pills, and all of them like gave me headaches or made me emotional or made me really nauseous. That was the most common thing, was that I would be so nauseous that like I couldn't even drive in a car without getting really sick. And so then I thought, okay, well maybe if I'm not taking it internally, you know, I can try NuvaRing, which is a hormone ring with progesterone that you put up inside of your vagina, like by your cervix. And so that's another form of birth control. And at that time I was using it for birth control and to control my painful periods. I absolutely hated the NuvaRing, so I ended up taking out and then not having any hormonal birth control. And this is where things kind of started to get a little bit weird in my body, so to speak. I started getting these really intense gastrointestinal symptoms. I would be so sick. I was in high school at the time. I would be so sick. I would be missing school. I lost a ton of weight. I really was really sick. I was throwing up all the time. I was having these really intense stomach pains. I started getting, you know, food allergies. I wasn't able to eat beef. I wasn't able to eat peanuts all of a sudden. I started having a peanut allergy. I'd never had that in my life. Went through all, you know, different diagnostic tests, got ultrasounds of my tummy, went and had an endoscopy, and they came back and said, oh, you have ulcers, you know, take this medicine, go home, you'll be fine. So I took the medicine. Didn't really make me any better, but for no reason other than needing to be back on another form of birth control, I started on the pill again. I went back to the pill. And so I stayed with that. I took a year off before college, and then the pill once again was making me really sick, so I stopped taking it. And as I tell this story, you will very easily be able to see a theme, but remember, when you're in it, when it's your life, you don't necessarily see the things and all the symptoms and how they fit together until kind of the end. But at the time, I didn't necessarily make the association. And so I stopped taking the hormonal birth control, and then I got sicker. And at the time, I didn't make the association that taking away the birth control made me have more of other symptoms. And so I started getting, and at first I would feel much better. And then after a few months, that's when the symptoms would set in. So after a few months, I started getting really bad stomach problems again. I was so sick all the time. I was throwing up, I was having diarrhea. I was like literally in the hospital getting IVs because I was passing out. I was missing work. I was just in like excruciating, you know, my whole stomach, my whole pelvis, everything was just so painful. Got so many tests done: colonoscopy, endoscopy, ultrasound, MRE with contrast dye, and MRI, just all these tests over and over again. And doctors that really were so dismissive pushed me away. I had a doctor tell me that it was because I was anorexic. I had another doctor tell me that it was because I smoked weed. I had another doctor tell me that I was sick because it was completely in my own head and I was depressed. And I was like bewildered. I literally felt like I was trying everything. I stopped smoking weed. I stopped doing this. I stopped doing that. I read up on all these different things like, oh my gosh, do I have like some psychosomatic thing going on? But really just like couldn't figure it out, didn't know what to do, and decided at that point to change my diet. So I went vegan and gluten-free, and that helped so much with the stomach upset symptoms that I was dealing with. And so then I was fine for like 2 more years. I mean, I still had pain. I had stuff going on. I wasn't feeling good. I get infections all the time, but it wasn't to the point where I couldn't like go to class. I wasn't like bedridden and the way that I have been in the past, and I had been before that point. And so I kind of continued on that trajectory. And then in my the right before my senior year of college, I started to get worse again. And at this point I had an IUD. I'd had my IUD for a while. I had it since I was a sophomore. And I started feeling worse, into my senior year of college. I was getting more infections. I was getting, I'd get yeast infections, BV all the time. Like, I'm a clean person. Like, honestly, those things have nothing to do with being dirty, but I was just getting sick. Like, I'd get sinus infections all the time. My stomach was more upset again. I had this pain in my like low belly that was unreal. Like, it would just double me over. I was struggling to exercise. I was struggling to do all of these things. And then, all these things were kind of pressing on my mind. I met a new partner and we did some romantic things to keep it PG. And then I had pain so bad, y'all. It was so bad. And I was like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. Here I am. I took some Advil, tried to roll over, tried to just deal. And the next day I was like, I have to go to the doctor. And keep in mind, this is after years of going to the doctor, years of diagnostic testing, years of this, years of that. Everybody saying, no, nothing. So I go to the doctor and I'm like, I think my IUD is off kilter. I feel like someone's stabbing me in my pelvis. And they go, oh no, it's probably just like a cyst that ruptured and you're fine. And at this point I had thought that I had cysts like 3 or 4 times. It was old news. I was like, okay, whatever, it's painful, go home. Then I had 2 more weeks of really feeling uncomfortable. I was like, I really feel like something's up with this IUD. This pelvic pain is so bad. And I was reading a lot, and I went to the library and I found this book called Ask Me About My Uterus. And I will link that book in the description box below. And so I read that book just because it was on the shelf. It wasn't something where I was, going fishing for answers. It literally was just on the shelf. I read the book and I read her story, and I just thought to myself, this sounds just like how I feel. These similar symptoms, the pain, the GI distress. I was losing my hair on the sides of my head at that point. Like, all of these things just lined up, just made so much sense. I went back, I looked at my medical history, and I was like, I must have endometriosis. And I had seen 4 gynecologists at this point. I had had ultrasounds. They had told me, nope, you're fine. You don't have endometriosis. You're good. I went back to the same practice, but for a new doctor, so like the same group, like business basically, but a different doctor at that business that had just moved, that specialized in endometriosis. I sat down with her, I laid everything out. I was like, these are my symptoms, this is what's going on, this is why I think that I have endometriosis. And she was so nice, she was so compassionate. She sat there, she listened through my whole thing, and then she was like, yep, so it sounds like you have endometriosis. And then she started asking me lots of other questions, like about my bladder and this and this and this and all these different things. And through that, we discovered that I likely had something called interstitial cystitis, which is chronic painful inflammation of your bladder, makes you go pee all the time. It is not fun, to say the least. And so we started on just kind of like this course of treatments. We talked through all of my options at that time, and my decision was I was in my last semester of college, and my decision at that time was to try all of the less invasive options. And then right at the end of my semester, if I still wasn't feeling better, then we would do a laparoscopy, which is a surgery that they do internally to both diagnose and remove endometriosis. And so that was the decision I made. And so in that 6 months, and that was also the 6 months in which I made any videos that are, you know, older on my channel from like a couple years ago. In that time, I was doing pelvic floor therapy once or twice a week. I was doing chiropractic. I was going to acupuncture and doing traditional Chinese medicine. I was eating a special diet. I was doing yoga every morning. I was like eating, you know, less acid, less spicy for my bladder. I was journaling every time I went pee. It was next level, just trying to manage and deal with my health. And I did 3 months of that. It really wasn't helping. My pain was getting so much worse. I was really struggling to go to class. At that point, I had to even like get letters from my doctor to my university so that I could have accommodations, because I was struggling to even sit through class. It was so painful. And then I ended up deciding that the pain was too intense, that I couldn't make it quite till surgery. And so I decided to try Orilissa, which is a medicine that is designed for treating endometriosis pain. It doesn't make endometriosis go away. There isn't really any evidence to show that it stops the growth of endometriosis, but it's supposed to help with the pain of having endo. And so I decided to do that, and I made videos about my experience of the months of being on that medicine that I will link below, so you can get way more details on that. Needless to say, I did not enjoy it very much. It upset my stomach, all these types of things. I feel like to some extent it did manage my pain, but through the end of that, I was definitely still like set on getting surgery. And the taking Orilissa isn't something that you take long term. You either take it for 6 months or for 2 years. So I knew there was an end date on that as well. So I knew that the surgery was going to be basically the best route for me at that point. So when it came time for surgery, my doctor and I had a pre-surgery consultation. We talked about what it was going to look like. We talked about the places in which she thought she was likely to find endo, which were in between my uterus and my bowels. She thought that she was going to find endo there because I did have so much lower gastrointestinal distress for so long. And then we also talked about how she wanted to do a scope of my bladder. So it's basically where they put a camera inside of your bladder to look around and see what the state of your bladder looks like. We talked about the possibility of if they found endometriosis on my bowels and how I could get like a section of that removed, but that would mean I would have to have a colostomy bag and all this really big stuff. And so before surgery, I made the decision to only have surgery on my uterus and not do my bowels and not have a colorectal surgeon there, and just do my bladder and my uterus and then see how I felt and do an additional surgery if I felt like I needed that. So the day of surgery was, you know, intense in a lot of ways. I was just coming off of being in school. I literally had like 7 days between graduating college and getting surgery. I felt like the surgery went really smoothly. My doctor was amazing. She ended up finding less endo in there as far as like adhesions and things like that than she thought she was gonna find, which was great. I was in between like a level 1 and a level 2 for endo, which because they grade it from like 1 until 4 or 5, and she said that it's really not something where the amount that's there is indicative of how much pain you will be in. So there's people who have a lot of endo who don't even know that they have it, don't even feel it, don't notice it until they maybe are having trouble conceiving, or they have another surgery in which it's discovered that they have endo. And then there's people who are at a 1 or a 2 who have a really high level of pain. And so it's kind of weird in that way. So I got the surgery. Recovery for me was tough because I was my own worst enemy. I could not sit down. I had so much trouble just like laying back and actually letting myself heal. So I unfortunately spent a lot of time trying to do too much, up and around and moving, and really just wearing my body out. So recovery did take a while. I don't want to go into too much of life after surgery because that was kind of like part of the diagnosis, right? Was getting the surgery. That's like the yes, officially you have endometriosis when they do the surgery and they find it and they remove it. And then also at that time, we confirmed that my bladder was like beyond inflamed and super red and super agitated. And so continuing with diet changes for that and everything to this day. So now here I am. It's been about 1.5 years since surgery. I'm still dealing with endo life. I have been diagnosed with endometriosis, interstitial cystitis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and now my doctors think that I have something called mast cell activation syndrome, which I am just starting to learn about and starting to get treated for. I'm going to talk more about all of these things in more videos. If there's something in the story that you want me to expand on, if you want to hear more about like what was surgery like, if you want to hear more about how to advocate for yourself at doctor's offices or what the signs and symptoms are, definitely leave a comment below and I would be happy to make that video and share all of that information with you. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed what I shared, or if you're an endo warrior yourself. And definitely subscribe for more content in the future about all things uterus and life. I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care, y'all. Bye. Oh, look, my little baby cat. Taking a little nappy. Hi, baby. I know, I love you. Oh, mommy love you. Hi, baby. Oh, yes. You take a nappy? You take a little nappy?